Hey guys, how we doing? So we're back in another anime news video. I love the Overlord videos, they're so good. I love learning new things. And so to see that he's doing this is pretty cool. This seems to be focusing on like the top 5 worst NPCs, which I have no clue about. Don't know if they've been touched upon. I don't think they've been touched upon in the anime. I don't know. I don't. I haven't watched the video. Oh god, I've had a couple of energy drinks. I'm so sorry. But let's just get into this. This is going to be cool. So this is part 1. I'm guessing it's part 1 of 5 because it's called the 5 worst in Overlord. Anyway, this is the 5 worst in Overlord. Nazarick's worst, most evil NPCs. Cool. Neuronist PK. Oh, let's get into this.
Did you know there exists a small group of NPCs in Nazarick
I did not.
that are so terrifying?
That's Rubedo
so
on the left, though, isn't it?
So evil that they're affiliated together to form the 5 worst.
The 5 worst.
Worst at what exactly, though? Well, each are definitively the worst in their own categories. We have the worst occupation, worst residence, worst appearance, worst personality, and worst hero. Normally, I'd talk about all 5 in one typical 20-minute video. But there's one character from the worst who deserves her own spotlight. The real best girl of Overlord.
Right.
The most thick being in Nazarick. Neuronist Painkiller. So let's spend an entire video talking about the beautiful creature that bears the title of Worst Occupation. But first, I'm happy to unveil the second design in the Nabe design. Cause we all know she's way better than Albedo.
Whoa.
But still not as good as Neuronist. So feel free to check it out with the
cool design though, I really like it. It works.
Let's begin. Of the 5 worst, the second worst is Neuronist Painkiller, the worst occupation.
Right, worst occupation.
No, she... yeah, let's just go with she.
Yeah, I thought she was in
She's
it.
Nazarick's resident full-time torturer, not to be confused with Hyohuko.
The skull dude thing that you showed as well was in it briefly as well, weren't they?
Apparently her actual job title is Special Intelligence Collector, not Torturer. Definitely a big difference.
Right.
She's a level 23 brain eater who resides on the 5th floor of Nazarick, the frozen glacier.
Right.
In a place called the Room of Truth.
God, I hope he does a whole video covering Nazarick. That'd be awesome.
Where prisoners of Nazarick are have their special intelligence collected while in.
I remember that scene now.
Yeah, I bet you're sensing a pattern in the use of euphemisms.
I need to go back and watch through Overlord again.
Neuronist's thing is that she's extremely effeminate and seductive, despite being a terrifying
the nails, such detail.
We see something like this in Hyohuko, who comes across as rational and reasonable, up until he decides you'd serve him best as a meal for his cockroaches. But it feels like Japan is a big fan of Gap horror.
Right.
Kind of like Gap Moe, but for horror instead.
Yeah.
You know, when they act in a way that is completely contradictory to their appearance. So, in a horror sense, basically something that's mostly scary that has an element to it which is normally not very frightening, but which ends up enhancing the horror rather than reducing it. In any case, her personality and mannerisms are a near-identical copy of Albedo, replete with copious uses of the phrase ara, which roughly translates to oh my, and is a common way to signify a mature woman in her mid-20s to early 30s, who comes across as faintly seductive, but also innocent at the same time. Now, quite unlike Albedo, who can be quite reserved, Neuronist Painkiller takes the fetishization of sexualization up to 11 out of 10.
Right, just
she wears a
cracks it up.
fetishistic BDSM outfit, covers herself with lovely perfume, regularly uses sexual euphemisms, and fantasizes about Heinz's beastly gaze and how she'd love to one day sleep with him.
Oh god.
But given her revolting body and disturbing voice, which in the light novel is said to be distorted to the point that no one can even tell whether Neuronist is male or female, these actions do the opposite of making her alluring and attractive. They really only serve to exacerbate how utterly revolting she is. On top of this, her mannerisms seem like nothing more than a disguise for her true personality. One of a torturer who delights in causing as much pain as possible, replete with a negative 425 karma rating to boot.
Whoa.
She speaks in sly euphemisms,
sense of justice, none at all.
And sing to the glories of Ainzul Gon and the Supreme Ones, which of course isn't the case. The singing would be the screams induced by having a thin spiked rod shoved into their unmentionables.
Yeah.
It's an act that seems to be designed to lure them into a false sense of comfort, serving to enhance the panic that they feel when they find out what she's really talking about. Of course, I say act as if to imply that she's merely pretending, but as an NPC, she can be created with basically any personality, regardless of how contradictory or absurd. It was her creator who set her to behave this way in order to maximize the horror. her creator who intended to have her act this way. She seems to think that she's far more beautiful than Shaltir or Albedo.
Oh.
Perhaps she also truly believes that torture-induced screams make for the best kind of choir too. Maybe even the purpose behind that delusion is to magnify the sense of terror.
So weird.
As C.S. Lewis once said, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. Then again, like most evil NPCs, she finds humans and other creatures not from Nazarick to be vile, disgusting creatures,
yeah, like beneath
and
them.
seems to relish in causing them suffering if given the opportunity.
Yeah.
So it could very well be that she's quite aware of the stark contrast between her personality, words, and actions. As for her build now, she's a member of the Brain Eater race, a heteromorphic race based off of a creature called Cthulhu.
Alright, cool. Yeah, I can see that.
Fictional mythos created by H.P. Lovecraft. Lovecraft's horror was themed around the unknowable.
So everything is
elder gods that were said to be interdimensional beings, whose true nature could never be understood. For to attempt to do so would eventually drive one insane. So, as you'd expect, they were often the subject of praise by deranged and insane cultists, who worshipped them fanatically. Interactions with them were frequently a Faustian bargain, a deal with the devil, if you will.
Right.
One that would eventually prove to be a mistake in the long run, when the bargainer was then forced to sacrifice everything. The intent was to evoke a kind of existential terror, a sense of unease brought on by uncertainty and the unknown, often associated with the thoughts of one's fundamental mortality and fragility as a human being. Incidentally, one of the best ways to describe Overlord is a Lovecraft parody, a topic that could very well get its own video at one point. Now, shifting back to the Brain Eaters, it's not clear what mechanical properties they have, though when referenced in fantasy fiction, their bewitching nature is often translated as a penchant for spellcasting ability, psionics, and mind control spells.
Damn.
In fact, Dungeons & Dragons has a race of creatures called Illithid, also known as Mind Flayers.
Right, so they're quite similar.
These creatures would use their powerful psionic
considering
abilities
it's loosely based off Dungeons & Dragons?
And then either drag them away to literally suck out their brains, or simply employ them as slaves and thralls.
Damn.
Regardless of whether Brain Eaters are psionic specialists or just general spellcasters, it's clear they have some utility in a spellcasting build. It's also good to know that it's believed that the Supreme One, Tabula Smaragdina, shares the same race. I mean, the visual similarities are pretty obvious, and he too was a spellcaster. But we have all this talk of spellcaster, yet we still don't know what type of spellcasting class Neuronist is. So, what class is she? Well, she was a cleric, or more specifically, one that had a breakdown of levels in Bishop, Doctor, Hand of God, and one other class. Bishops are of course high-ranking clerics, and Hand of God may be even higher than that still.
It says God Hand.
The higher rank the cleric, the higher tier of magic they could access. Their spells are powered through faith in a deity, an ideology, or whatever. Strong, devout faith itself is sufficient, regardless of whether they believe in something real or not. The author of Overlord, Maruyama, through the character of Vines, applies a rather atheistic view of divine spellcasting. In traditional Dungeons & Dragons, from which Overlord takes many of its fantasy mechanics, a cleric actually communes with a small part of an actual god, who in return gives them a small fraction of divine power, and expects them to act as their proxy to influence the world. But in traditional Japanese Shintoism, and in lots of fantasy settings in general, acts of faith, belief, and prayer itself are often said to make gods and or fantasy beings more powerful. And in return for giving the god power through devout faith, the gods return that faith with blessings of their own. I assume this is similar to how the mechanics of Goblin Slayer's blessings work, performing a chant of worship to their god in exchange for a blessing of strength or power. Maruyama's take is a twist on that interpretation. The faith does not power the god, who then proceeds to grant the believer power. The faith itself is an expression of power, and need not pass through any intermediary. After all, clerics are capable of casting spells about as fast as wizards are, and that isn't exactly conducive with the theory that you're sitting there waiting around for your prayers to be answered by a god in some other dimension. As for the remaining classes, a doctor may be a healing magic specialist. Clerics generally had a balance of buffs, healing, and attack spells, so a doctor might be specialized specifically towards boosting healing magic. Or, more likely, it probably helped with the treatment of wounds, poisons, and diseases, without the use of magic spells, though such a treatment would obviously be much slower and weaker than magic in exchange for not costing any MP. Now, you might be wondering, why would a torturer need a set of healing spells? Well,
to keep them alive?
You can't get information from a dead person.
Yeah,
just
there
like
you go.
How you can't feed
Yeah.
the residents of Demir's Happy Farm without their
If you're torturing them and then they die, you're not getting the info, yeah.
I'll clarify in a little bit. On the other hand, one could just make or buy scrolls, which allow them to cast a spell once without expending any MP. Or even wands, which allow them to cast that spell multiple times before running out of charges. So, why they would want to pick a class in a video game that is forced to use much slower methods like bandages or herbs is a bit of a mystery. The benefits are pretty minuscule as they only entail moderately lower costs, but the drawbacks are dramatically less potency and dramatically slower healing. So I don't entirely see the value of the trade. But that's pretty much all I could gather from her build. As for her name itself, Neuronist Painkiller, those could be references to the English words neuron and painkiller. The former is the name of the nerves that comprise your brain, and the latter is the name of the medicine that reduces pain.
Yeah.
They're probably just references to her brain-eater race and doctor vocation, though they could also be subtle understatements. Neuronist sounds nicer than brain-eater.
Yeah, it does.
That literally eats your brains. And painkiller is pretty much the exact opposite of what she actually does.
Yeah.
Though, keep in mind, it may not be useful to try and read too heavily into the meaning of these words. Japan sometimes borrows English words that sound cool to them instead of using the Japanese equivalent, and oftentimes, they'll accidentally change the definition, or the spelling of the word in the process, like neuron into neuronist and painkiller into painkill. So her name may just be another example of that.
Could be.
Now that you know a little bit more about her character, you might be wondering what a religious minister, psionic specialist, and doctor have to do with torturing. Torturer wasn't exactly a normal function or class that one could actually fulfill back in Yggdrasil.
Ah, right, okay.
It was a product of her biography, which became real once Nazarick was transported into the New World.
Right.
In Yggdrasil, NPCs mostly just stood around wherever they were placed and fought intruders.
Yeah.
So how does one create a torturer specialist in Nazarick? Well, as I was previously referring to, if you remember in our Demiurge video, any good torturer needs to be able to heal their victims. After all, the purpose of torture is to cause torment and suffering, not death. But it's hard to torture someone if you constantly have to keep worrying about accidentally killing them.
Yeah.
If you injure them too severely, you'd have to stop the torture and wait for them to heal for a few days or weeks before you could do it again. But with healing spells, that problem virtually disappears.
You just keep doing
it. And
it.
you're free to repeatedly torture someone to the verge of death, and then heal them back up again.
Yep, and then do it again.
Efficiency at its finest.
Rinse and repeat.
You may also be interested to know that Neuronist did not. To assist her in her endeavors, she's served by a selection of 4 minions, known only as torturers.
Right.
Cut from the anime, so we'll just go with the light novel's description.
Right.
They wore tight black leather aprons. Their bodies were not so much white as cream-colored. Below that skin were, if blood could be purple, purplish blood vessels.
Ooh.
Their heads were covered in seamless black leather masks. There was no telling how they could see or even breathe. Their arms were also very long. Each of them was about 2 meters tall, but their arms extended down below their knees, and the belts at their waists contained countless work tools. So yeah, she had 4 helping hands, which makes sense, I guess, for a torturer. I mean, I guess you can't exactly torture someone 24/7 all by yourself.
No, I'm going to take a break.
I think the more important benefit from having torturing assistance is the ability to cause pain to multiple different areas of the body, instead of just one area at a time. Or even just torture multiple people at once. Now, just add on top of that a selection of psionic attacks that can mess with your mind, as well as healing magic that can restore any injuries back to full health, and I think you have a pretty good recipe for eternal suffering and existential terror.
Yeah, you got it going there.
The next member of the 5 worst might just have Neuronist Painkiller beat on that front, if you can even believe that's possible. Unfortunately, though, that will have to be in the next video, where I go over the remaining 4 members of the 5 worst.
Cool.
Now, before I go, a huge thank you to Bakuretsu for designing the Nabe merch for me.
Looks cool.
Once again, it's a minimalistic style that still highlights the essence of the character. You can get both this design and the Succubate design through the links in the description. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time, ciao.
Love it. So informative. Like, he goes over, like, little bits, and then it's like, well, what does that have to do with it? Well, I'll tell you. He's really good at putting the information together. I like it. It's, that is cool, and I do remember her being rather creepy with that, poor gentleman tied up. So yeah, that's cool. We'll definitely check those out as they as they come out. And there is another Goblin Slayer cut content video that I need to cover as well, which I think I'm doing. Yeah, I'll cover that before Christmas. Looking at my list, I got so much to do. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. And I'll see you guys. It's all you guys next time.